Zoe Pepper is a writer and director, and her production company Side Pony Productions is bringing The Irresistible to the Canberra Theatre Centre. The Irresistible is an abstract play that explores unconscious bias, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it. I spoke with Zoe about her work, unconscious bias, and what she sees as the role of humanity in theatre. So Zoe, I wanted to start talking to you today about Side Pony Productions because you're bringing The Irresistible obviously here to Canberra, but also you work generally on innovative theatre, and I read on your website that you're interested in making engaging, smart works as a celebration of humanity. So I'm really interested in in how that's taken this form for you and how you first decided that you might be interested in directing and producing sort of what are quite ambitious works.
For me, I'm always I kind of really consume a lot of content around moral psychology, and I'm really fascinated by the complexity of human behaviour and kind of the many, many contradictions that make up a person.
That makes a lot of sense to hear. I mean, I'm not sure what sort of moral philosophies and psychologies appeal to you the most, but the idea that you just raised of hypocrisies in behaviour and sort of the gaps in our morality and understanding, that resonates because I read a bit about your background, of course, and saw that you studied under Gaulier in Paris. And
that was pretty full on.
Yeah, I can imagine. Most listeners won't know. I shouldn't assume. Many listeners won't know what it is to go to École Gaulier in Paris, but I guess it's fundamentally a clowning school. Do you want to tell us a bit about your experience there?
Yeah, I mean, it was strange because I didn't really want to be an actor at the time, but for me, it was really. I went in 2008 and then went back again in, I think, 2012, something like that. And it was really, I remember it was a real revelation when I first went, because it was like he had a language and a way of describing a kind of performance that I'd been trying to make back in Perth, in terms of a style that really values play and irreverence, and that is about humanity and authenticity, but ultimately it's underpinned by this sense of play, and knowing that at the end of the day we're just playing dress ups, it's
sure,
we're not saving lives, we're telling stories.
Saving lives through telling stories. Come on.
Yeah. It's important, but it's not the be-all and end-all. So to take yourself too seriously is kind of a bit of a foul, really.
I want to hear more about the experience, though, at the school, because, to go back, particularly when you, I imagine over that time, solidified the idea that you didn't want to be an actor. I mean, it's quite a really intensive experience from my understanding. I haven't been, but he sits there with a drum and hits it when you stop being funny, and continuously demands that you keep coming up with new ideas and keep being, I guess, take that spirit of playfulness into whatever you're presenting. Like it breaks a lot of people into tears. Did you have that experience there?
Oh God, it's awful. Yeah, it's like
sort of forced vulnerability and failure.
Kind of more watching people kind of get to that point where they just didn't want to play anymore.
Oh, no.
And you can kind of see that that's actively what he's doing to people, where you get to this point where you don't want to play anymore, and then you kind of like a teenager are like, well, fuck you. Saying, I'll swear on this thing.
Of course.
Yeah. Fuck you. I don't know what you want from me. I don't know what you're expecting from me. So I'm just gonna do my thing. And that sort of seems to be a lot of what he wanted in the first place, but it takes that whole journey for people to get to that point where they're going to just be themselves.
So is that what happens afterwards? You get to this point, you like you've been told you suck, you have this authority that's sort of, you know, you didn't choose in this way necessarily, but you also did. So you have that rebellion, the fuck you moment, and then are people their authentic selves playing? That doesn't seem like an obvious path to me.
Yeah, for moments they are. I mean, shit, that's not a golden rule. Definitely not. But it did seem to, watching that process unfold in the classroom. And look, I'm not trying to like draw any massive parallels between myself and Gaulier. Don't worry, nothing that big-headed at all. But then experiencing that in rehearsals where you can see the frustration of actors like pushing up against me, wanting them to do all this weird stuff. And that their MO when they first come in is to please, and then once you get over the desire to please, because you realise that that's just never going to work because there's never any authenticity or kind of, it's hard to dream around someone when they're trying to please you. And then when they're just so pissed off, then they start coming good.
That's super interesting. I have a temperament to want to please people, and it's been a costly thing to overcome, I guess, in a personal life. But I never thought about it. A director's need to encounter the same thing because you come in with that authority, I guess, over the actors straight away. So they want to be impressive to you and do what they think you want them to do, which is, I guess, anathemic to exploration. Do you have a relationship with your actors before you work with them normally?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I'm pretty picky, and like, I've been working with Adrian and Tim for a really long time. We all studied together at WAPA, nearly 15 years ago, like we're getting old. And we've been working together since. And I think the strength of this show is really built on having a shared language and a shared taste and style in terms of what we're looking for in a performance. And we really made a concerted effort going into this show of, once you've made kind of like 10 years of work, you've got enough of a back catalogue that you can look back and be like, oh, this is what we're doing on repeat. And so, it was looking back and seeing what was panning out on repeat and then making an active decision to try and break that for this show and to really push ourselves and go further and harder to make something that was, different and spoke more to kind of like where we want to go with our practice rather than where we've been.
Interesting. You used a lot of, I think, repeat adjectives in describing your work earlier. Humanity. I noticed empathy comes up a lot. I know that it's often really hard for artists to describe their own work, but once you do have that 10 years of a body that you reflect on in the way that you describe, it becomes easier. What were the things that you looked back on and decided to leave behind when you were trying to find the direction that you want to be going?
Yeah, I guess it's more about rather than the thematics or the content, I think that's always going to kind of like come back to it being a human story that, is asking people to empathise with characters. That's so consistent. But what we chose to leave behind was really an aesthetic around like a really kind of hammy, overt. Oh,
that's fine.
Shit.
It's human.
He's back.
Oh, canine.
Yeah, just following me around the house.
Just shows that it's not scripted,
Yeah. Like a hammy kind of overt aesthetic that's a bit cheesy. And then that sort of lends itself to a style of storytelling that uses kind of more presentational shortcuts in a way, which I think is also just about like learning how to write a story, where to get from A to B, you really need like 5 little subtle points. And in the days of old, we'd probably have 2 or 3 less subtle points that take us from A to B, which means there's more kind of like direct storytelling to the audience God, that sounds very around the houses way of saying things. I don't know if that makes any sense to you.
No, it's great. It's kind of surprised in a way to hear this structured approach, not because your work isn't obviously rigorous, but I haven't seen The Irresistible. I'm very excited. So we all are here at the theatre, actually. But from the information that we've got about it and the shorts that I've seen, it looks like quite an abstract work, and with maybe, and I'm just guessing, but it looks like sort of impressionistic metaphors. There's this sludge in things. There's sort of a lot of smoke and dialogue that's sort of, I guess, less conventional. But you in writing this, did you sit down with numbered dot points of story plots that you a narrative arc that you wanted to hit?
Well, yes and no. Like, we kind of built out this big blob of story. That was that was also part of this shake-up in our process of not going in knowing what the story structure was going to be exactly, and trying to do something that was more layered and having parallel narratives running at the same time. I guess maybe to clarify with the point about the little mini beats that you need in order to tell a story, it's more about the kind of classic old show, don't tell. And we're better at showing it and giving the audience the experience of feeling it and coming to that realization on their own, maybe than we were in the past, where you do more tell than show. Now I've forgotten your question. Oh, yeah, it's impressionistic. Yeah, I mean, the other thing is that we really tried to use some more cinematic techniques in making this show, which is probably why it seems a bit more amorphous from the footage and the photos and stuff that you've seen. And then it's all about the audio, and the audio really let us be able to break a lot of theatre conventions that dictate that a scene is X amount of time, and then it's quite clear when a scene ends and another one begins, and when one character leaves and another one comes in, and that the audio allowed us to have no clear delineation between one scene ending and another beginning, or where one character stops and the other one begins.
It sounds like you have a really I mean, I guess you obviously have an expert grasp on the tools at your disposal to find this humanity and shared story and meaning. But it's hard for me to picture that alongside conventional theatre works. And you, for this work, received a nomination for the Helpman. And I wonder what your relationship is with the broader theatre world and receiving, accolades like that, because it kind of sounds like you have this fascination with ideas and then this mastery of their communication. And I don't know if that's necessarily correlates at all to an interest in other works or that sort of scene or the world. I don't know. I'm not in it, so maybe I don't understand it. But what does it feel like what to get that nomination and that sort of recognition, and how do you see your work relative to what other people are doing?
The nomination was pretty exciting, really.
I bet.
Just because we were the anomaly up against all these majors that are making far more conventional work. So
yeah, congratulations. It is a tremendous nudge.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, to cut through with such an oddball show that is also from Perth, which is the biggest handicap you can grow.
Try being in Canberra.
At least they can come to Canberra.
Yeah, that's true.
So that was great. And I don't think, I think thematically it's these bigger ideas of it being about humanity. That's kind of what all theatre is about, really, I think. And maybe the focus on just focusing on it as kind of like of primary importance is maybe the difference, and wanting it to feel human and relatable and not stagey and acty and like too theatrical is kind of maybe where it sits apart. But yeah, we are in a weird little vortex of because we don't really fit in with the performance art crowd, and we don't really fit in with the theatre crowd. It's sort of its own little middle ground. And I'm working a lot more in film at the moment, which is working out great.
How are you finding that? Do you have a preference for it, or I guess the opportunities are different?
Yeah, the opportunities are really different. And after like working in one industry for a long time, it's kind of like refreshing to be excited about what's possible. So it's great on that level.
Can you tell us about the projects you're working on?
Yeah, I'm just wrapping up on a short called Mystic Pines, which I wrote together with Adrienne Daff, and she's starring in it as well. And we've actually taken some of the voice work that we did in Irresistible and kind of like mapped it over onto this, like playing around with auto-tune and this kind of like strange plain song kind of singing through auto-tune with a harmonizer.
That sounds fun.
To see how that works in a cinematic context. But it's really exciting. Like, it's a brand new world in terms of there's so much to learn. And it's just kind of finding a way to map my style onto a new form and kind of like let it grow in that form.
For the Irresistible, one of the terms that's come up in the reading that I've done about it is its focus on unconscious bias and its exploration of that. Do you want to talk a bit about what it is that you're reading about unconscious bias that sort of struck you, and why you decided to include that of all, I guess, psychological phenomena that you come across in your reading in a play? Because obviously it takes a tremendous amount of work to put something on the stage. Yeah,
I mean, it was quite like I'd gone down this rabbit hole of unconscious bias of reading a bunch of books and stuff like that. And then it was quite confronting when we got into the theatre and we're like, oh shit, what have we done? We're trying to make a show about something that you don't know that you're doing and you can't see. How are we going to kind of unpack this?
Can you give an explanation to our listeners of unconscious bias?
Oh, gosh, it's been a long time. I'm trying to remember this story that explains it. A man and his son are in a car accident, and the man dies on impact, and his son is rushed to the nearest hospital. And when he gets to the hospital, the surgeon takes one look at him and says, I can't operate on this boy. He's my son. How is that possible?
Well, it's impossible because the man died in the car crash, obviously.
Yeah, but the surgeon is the boy's mother.
Yeah. It's such a funny one that it's so nice. So I'm 34, and it's really fun that just in my lifetime that's gone from being a riddle that you would hear told publicly to baffle people to something that is just so ridiculously obvious. I played a band with people in their early 20s, and I told them that riddle the other day, and they're like, "What? How on earth would you like? They can't even conceive of a society in which it wasn't an obvious answer, in which the idea that a woman would be a surgeon is stumping people." But so this is your sort of archetypal, I guess, thought gap or example of the shortcut.
It becomes that moment where like it's not instinctive, but like the cogs have to turn for you to come up with the right answer, and it's that feeling of like the cogs turning or like not getting that riddle straight up, that, just a little tiny gap in your consciousness where personally it makes me feel a little bit sick when the first time I read that and I was, had that moment before you're like, oh, of course, certain can be women. And it was like that feeling, that's what we want to try and give to the audience.
Yeah, right. Oh, geez. That's...
Rather than it being like a kind of cerebral explanation of unconscious bias, because if you wanted to do that, you could just read a book.
Yeah, of course.
But to give people the feeling, I think it's really where...
Did you...
that's the purpose of art kind of thing.
Did you, in your research for this, or research separate to deciding that you wanted to do this, did you encounter any... Did you have a process of encountering unconscious biases in your own thinking that you were surprised by or had to interrogate? Has there been a personal transformative journey on the road to producing this work?
Yeah, I mean, I think our work that's been coming since it is definitely all the more stronger for it. Mm-hmm. And to like really challenge ourselves to make interesting three-dimensional female characters, which is ridiculous, like in that it's usually Adrian and I who've been writing this feature for a while, but so we plotted one character as a boy for like 6 months just so that we wouldn't have that mental block of not knowing what they could do next, what interesting thing they could do next. And then flip the gender to be a girl now. But yeah, we needed to do that as a kind of like mental trick.
Yeah, right.
So that you don't just like sit around staring at each other being like, God, I just don't know what she could do.
Yeah. Wow, that's super interesting that even, at the level where you're obviously completely aware of these things and if I can assume a woman yourself, then you need to engage in these narrative tricks for the brain. That's fascinating. And that you do have the discipline to do it as well. That's super interesting.
I mean, I'd love to just get over it. But and another thing
it's
that
hard to be free of your own culture.
It's true. That came up when we first started playing around with these voice modulators during a development for the show, when we first kind of busted them out as our like favorite toy for this show, where Adrian and Tim were improvising a scene where Tim was in jail and Adrian was kind of like this jail bride. God, none of this was in the show, but who had come to visit him and they've never known him outside of him being in prison. And I was just getting so kind of like fed up with listening to Adrian play out on Tim's character for being a jerk. And then I switched, because I had the master controller, switched Adrian's voice over to make her sound like a man. And she didn't change what she was saying. She still had the same argument, but all of a sudden she seemed so much more reasonable, which was like not a proud little glitch in my matrix that I wanted to celebrate, but more that thing of like, oh yeah, there's one of those moments where you're like, there's that unconscious bias that I have that I'm not aware of at all times, but trying to like create situations where you can expose that is really what we were trying to do with this show.
So that's a big device in the show, is it the auto tune, sort of getting the different
so Tim and Adrian play all the characters, and they're kind of in control of their voice in terms of like switching between multiple characters vocally, so they end up having conversations with themselves and playing out scenes where there's multiple characters but it's just the two of them. Yeah.
What are you currently reading, and do you have like a dream project Those are two separate questions. Sorry, I just got so excited with one idea and bled it into the other. I'll start again. What are you currently reading? What are you currently ingesting and learning about?
Look, my favourite guy to listen to at the moment is this guy, Dr. Ian McGilchrist, who's all about how you've got a left brain and a right brain, and that I'm going to screw it up now. The right brain, is it right brain? Anyway, the non-artsy brain is kind of like really taken over the Western world, and
that's the left brain historically, I think.
Yeah, and we're a slave to it at the moment. So, yeah, a lot of his description of these two different kinds of thinking is really fascinating me at the moment, as well as I just read this book about shame, which I thought was interesting and kind of like a modern context. It was all about public shaming online.
Was it the John Ronson book?
Yeah. You read that one?
Yeah, so you've been publicly shamed. Yeah, I have. Yeah, super interesting in the contemporary space where the pylons, which is seemingly such a natural part of, I guess, our monkey brains, can have such, I guess they're so augmented from being online, and they can be so, hugely consequential. Do you have you ever done any work with that, or are you interested in exploring that?
Oh, look, I've just started, the note has been opened of a show that would involve shame. And then it's like the tinkering of like little bits of ideas that drip out and then, in a long time become show. That's how it usually rolls out.
Yeah, sure. I love that. So what do you think the lead time was for you starting to become interested in unconscious bias to, opening night for the Irresistible?
Oh, not too long actually, because that show like morphed from something completely different. Probably only a year.
A year? That is a quick turnaround. So we can expect to see the Shame show.
Yeah, the Shame show.
2020. Yeah. Shame show, that's good. I came up with it though, unfortunately, so you're going to need to come up with your own title. I'm not sure how copyright works. You mentioned you work across film, obviously theatre. Participatory gaming is something else that I read that you do. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I've also got an app called Audio Play that...
Sorry, what's it called?
Audio Play.
Mm-hmm.
And Gemma, who's the producer for The Irresistible, really kind of heads that one up. And that's sort of a spin-off that's come about off the back of a theatre show called The Confidence Man, which is like an interactive audio show where audience members wear headphones and then like hear their own discrete audio channel that guides them to play their part in a narrative. And how we've adapted it is it's now an app for kids where kids get to like be a character in a story, 2 to 4 kids, and then it's kind of like old school play where we're like encouraging them to build cubbies out of chairs and blankets and things like that, but then like souped up with really great audio because we're really stressing those kids out in the fastest way you can imagine.
Yeah, sure. That sounds really fun. I guess across all of your work with the, like you say that all artworks are trying to share humanity. I guess I feel the same, but I don't hear everybody articulate that in that specific way. You work across these different platforms. What would you say overall it is that you're trying to do? Because it does seem to be more than just an exploration, because there is something in sharing that.
Yeah, but I guess that's where like art has that function of uniting people and giving everyone a shared experience. And, it's like that thing where you could see dance as functionless in society, but its function is that it unites the group sort of thing. And actually,
I read something that said that that theorized that dance was one of the big functions of it was, I mean, obviously there's like a mating function, but one of them was the sort of complexities and intricate dances that have developed across cultures for across large periods of time were to determine a form of intelligence and this is pretty callous, but this is what I read: screen for neurological disorders.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I just thought I'd share that as it came up organically.
How does it screen for neurological disorders?
Well, I guess there are the complexity of certain types of thinking and learning and demonstration. Yeah, they probably exclude some people from being able to do it. But it's quite a dark turn for the conversation potentially to take. So I'll get back to the much nicer side of what you're saying, which is that in being able to share this humanity and share these experiences. Do you have like a dream project that you like have in the top shelf of your mind that one day you would like to do, or even a type of project?
Oh, I'm just like gunning towards making a feature film at the moment. That's my dream project currently. Hopefully that's a reality that's not too far away. In answer to your previous question, though, now that I have a little bit of time to think about it.
Of course.
That's zooming out slightly. I feel like the function of story is really about, well, one of the functions is to kind of really develop people's emotional intelligence and make them think about things from different angles and to empathize with other people's different situations. And if we think about imagination as sort of the precursor to empathy, that to be able to engage in this imagined world and suspend your disbelief to put yourself in the shoes of the character is really about growing your own emotional intelligence by imagining you are all these different people that are represented in stories, whether they be docos or fictionalized stories.
That's a wonderfully articulated and very high and noble ideal, and I hope that you're able to reflect that in every grant application that you put in, and I hope it's received accordingly.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but all these highfalutin ideas. At the end of the day, let's not pretend also that we're not taking ourselves too seriously.
Of course. Keep coming back to that spirit of play.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I know I've already said it a few times, but I'm really looking forward to seeing The Irresistible. It's on here at the Playhouse in the Canberra Theatre Centre. What's opening night here? I think it's the 21st of September. Is that right? Do you know when your show's running in our theatre?
I think I was cutting your radio ad just now. I want to say the 20th and the 21st.
20th and the 21st of September at the Playhouse in the Canberra Theatre Centre.
Maybe double check that.
Yeah, double check it. Don't just buy tickets to... buy tickets to anything you want at the theatre. Goodness, I'll be out of a job.
Sure.
But definitely make sure you do come along and see The Irresistible. It's going to be great. Zoe, thanks so much for talking with me today.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
I'll just stop recording.